Once the 1998 Godzilla was hit by negative reviews from film critics, audiences, and Godzilla fans alike, Toho producer Shogo Tomiyama was scrambling to find a new director for this new Japanese Godzilla movie. So Shogo Tomiyama would bring back a favorite from the Heisei era, Takao Okawara, who was ready to take the Godzilla series in a fresh new direction. Although one man who would not return from the Heisei era was the legendary but now retired suit actor Kenpachiro Satsuma, so Sotsuma Kitagawa would take the reins. Kitagawa would play Godzilla throughout the Millennium era movies besides being switched out occasionally. The soundtrack for this movie would be composed by Takayuki Hattori, the same man who did the music for Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, not Akira Ifukube this time, who had retired from the Godzilla franchise. Hattori's score for this movie is okay, I guess, compared to his work on Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, but it's still an improvement. Sadly, on February 8th, 2006, legendary composer Akira Ifukube, who had been working on Godzilla scores since the 1954 original, would sadly die because of multiple organ dysfunction. By this point, special effects director Koichi Kawakita had retired from the Godzilla franchise, so he'd be replaced by Kenji Suzuki, whose love for green screen and chroma key would shine throughout the Millennium era. Surprisingly enough, Toho's tight budget for this movie would somehow manage to allow a ton of CGI, although none of it is very realistic. Despite the 98 Godzilla getting hit by negative reviews, it still made a lot of money, hence TriStar's enormous marketing campaign, so Emmerich and Devlin set off to make two proposed sequels. The first of which has the baby Godzilla seen at the end of the first movie growing up to be a full-grown Godzilla and then fighting an old foe like King Ghidorah. The second of which had the same thing happen to the baby Godzilla, but then it fights a giant insect monster. But both ideas were eventually dropped and the sequel was scrapped due to low enthusiasm from the studio and Emmerich. The movie basically begins with three different introductions, each of which are entertaining and all feature Godzilla, but run way too short. From there, we get to meet some of our main characters, one of which is someone I may or may not have forgotten the name of, played by Takahiro Murata, who we last saw in Godzilla vs. Mothra. He's followed by his daughter and a TV reporter that's trying to get pictures of Godzilla. We then meet the human antagonist of this movie, Mutsuo Kitagiri, played by Hiroshi Abe, who delivers such an over-the-top performance it comes off as campy, cheesy, and sometimes even comical. After destroying some poor guy's lighthouse, Godzilla goes into town to cause some rampage, and this scene honestly has a lot of shots that resemble the 1954 original. The Mir or Meyer Goji suit would be sculpted by Shinichi Wakaza, and this design would be much more reptilian-like than some of the previous ones, comparable to the King Goji suit from 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla. This is actually one of my favorite Godzilla designs of all time, and the first Godzilla design to be green, despite some movie posters and the Hanna-Barbera cartoon appearing green. Later, Godzilla resurfaces in Tokyo Bay for his second attack, but the military is ready with helicopters and tanks to attack him. The helicopters were portrayed with partial CGI, and it does not hold up that well. In fact, some of the plane effects from the 1956 Rodan hold up better. But this doesn't really matter anyway, because a giant space rock dubbed the Millennium is here to attack Godzilla and humanity. It starts a beam battle with Godzilla, but eventually wins and then flies off. The Millennium is a very interesting alien compared to some of the other ones from the 70s and 90s. It shares some of Godzilla's cells, which means it also can regenerate like Godzilla and obtains the ability to grow dorsal fins, which we see used later. By this point, the Millennium has pretty much taken over Tokyo and planted itself on top of a building. But Godzilla has something to say about this and marches through the city as his main theme plays in the background. No matter the movie or the composer, the Ifukube themes have to be thrown in there from time to time, and in this movie they do a pretty good job with that. But the Millennium has had enough with this crap and flies into the air and turns into the abominable Orga. Before the final design of Orga was submitted, a lot of concept art was made, but I'm glad they stuck with the final design because it perfectly captures the goofy atmosphere of this movie. Orga and Godzilla then engage in some hand-to-hand combat, just like the good old days of the Showa era, but then Orga tries to eat Godzilla, which was an idea that popped up in the making of Godzilla vs. Biollante, but now we see it realized in full. Sure, it's pretty awkward, but the idea of Orga growing dorsal fins is so cool, and the finale is worth it as well, with Godzilla blowing up Orga into 100 pieces. Then Abe's character looks in the distance as Godzilla roars and then begins to approach him. Everyone runs away, but Abe just stands there staring his nemesis down. And then he's killed. So after he dies, we're reminded that Godzilla is definitely not humanity's friend because he continues his rampage on Tokyo, and the credits roll. Godzilla Millennium was released on November 6, 1999 and received mixed reviews from both critics and audiences, but most praised it for it bringing back the quote-unquote old Godzilla. Shogo Tomiyama had originally considered making a trilogy of Godzilla films, or even waiting until 2004 to make a 50th anniversary special Godzilla film, but now he was reconsidering his plans. Now he was going to make a whole new series of Godzilla films like the Heisei era films before it, reinventing Godzilla's origins. Shortly after Godzilla Millennium was released, TriStar began making a dubbed, edited version with new music by J. Peter Robinson, and they also changed the title to Godzilla 2000, but most confused fans think the original title is Godzilla 2000. The project would be supervised by Mike Schlesinger, and Schlesinger would change the Godzilla roar in the movie to one sounding nearly identical to the '98 roar. But anyway, I like Godzilla Millennium. Although some of the CGI wasn't great, seriously, it was terrible, and some of the human action wasn't at its best, I still think it was a well-paced Godzilla movie with enough Godzilla and enough human action, and also enough of the new kaiju Orga. And apparently I'm not alone. This movie is very well liked amongst the fan base, and I think still is. And apparently Shogo Tomiyama heard my message, because soon enough a new Godzilla movie was put into production. Next time we dive into 2000's Godzilla vs. Megaguirus.